Welcome to this version of Achieving Your Optimal Health. And we have as our guest today, Scotty Babb. Our focus is the path to brain trauma recovery. And just to begin with a little bit about Scotty, is that Scotty is a certified life and health coach at Scotty Babb's Health and Life Keys, and he specializes in trauma survivors and caregivers. He's also an announcer at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and maybe he'll say a little bit about that in a moment. Scotty himself, where he gets his expertise and his knowledge of brain trauma injuries that we refer to as TBI, he himself is a survivor. And as a survivor, he's uniquely equipped to help TBI survivors. Traumatic brain injury survivors typically experience the symptom of disinhibition. And this manifests itself in the form of being unable to regulate their emotions and has been referred to as an I broke my filter experience. Anger is the emotion most visibly expressed by TBI survivors. However, any emotion can run out of control. Anger rises to the surface when emotions have built up internally, in part due to being frustrated from dealing with TBI symptoms on a prolonged daily basis. And in this webinar today, here are some things you can expect. First of all, why people around traumatic brain injury survivors often believe the survivors are angry all the time. How here in Las Vegas, survivors have been kicked out of UMC emergency for being obstinate, and then they died on the sidewalk. And expect to learn something about what healthcare professionals and others need to know about TBI. And finally, what TBI survivors need in order to get better. And then, for the benefits of attending this webinar, expect to gain a greater understanding of traumatic brain injury, TBI survivors, to increase your ability to support traumatic brain injury survivors, to make decisions and take actions that could potentially be life-saving for TBI survivors, and finally, to be better prepared should a friend or coworker or family member suffer traumatic brain injury. So, Scotty, it's really a pleasure to have you here and an honor to have you here with us today. And what I'd like to start out with is just go ahead and share anything about yourself that you want to add to this introduction that I just gave.
Well, thank you, David. I really appreciate being here today. And like you said, I am a traumatic brain injury survivor. It's been actually 9 years the day after tomorrow. It was
Wow.
4/11 that I was injured. And the major part of my healing didn't happen until 3 years ago. In the last 3 years, I've seen an enormous amount of healing, although I still do have, several symptoms, but I've learned adaptations for the ones that haven't gotten better. And then I've also been lucky enough to heal up in certain ways. These things are not predictable. You cannot predict which symptoms will go away over time. Some of the symptoms will stay with you the rest of your life. So, but I'm very happy to be able to work with everybody. But at the same time, I am specializing in caregivers and survivors. Now, caregivers have a very special situation. All your caregivers for traumatic brain injury survivors are either a spouse or a relative, maybe even a child might wind up taking care of their parent, or vice versa. It just happens so quickly, and it changes so many lives in an instant. And so all of a sudden you've gone from being a wife and everything's going fine, to now everything about your spouse is your responsibility. Everything that happens, you have to take care of. So it's quite a shock to the caregiver. And then also they're worried about, I don't know anything about this. How can I possibly, take care of them properly? And then you've got to deal with all the red tape of insurances. If there's a lawsuit involved, you got to deal with attorneys. It can be a real nightmare for caregivers, and I guarantee you it'll be the most stressful thing that happens in their lifetime. So I really am trying to help caregivers. I saw what my wife went through. I'm very lucky to be married to her for 32 years now, and we got through it, but it is very tough. Unfortunately, the suicide rate and divorce rate for traumatic brain injury survivors is extremely high. The reason for the suicide rate is, I would say, the emotional impact of TBI. You have to remember, you didn't break your leg, you didn't get burnt. You broke the one thing that you usually use to deal with your injury. Well, if your tool that you use to deal with the injury is what you broke, how can you possibly be expected to be able to deal with it? So I always tell people, the first thing I tell them is, ask them is, are you in therapy? A traumatic brain injury survivor, you can't do this by yourself. So you need to get into talk therapy. You need both a psychiatrist and a psychologist. The reason you need a psychologist is because they deal in medicine. They really don't deal in much talk at all. They will give you things like Zoloft or Xanax to help you, deal with your situation.
So covering the symptoms, probably,
Right, yeah.
or masking the symptoms without.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mask. It actually helps you regulate the brain chemicals that usually regulate your emotions.
Okay.
So it isn't so much a masking as it is a regulation of brain chemicals. Because when your brain has an injury, it loses the ability to do that. That's one of the most common symptoms of brain injury, is that you break your filter or you get disinhibition. And that means all emotions are out of control. So if you're unfortunate enough to have a loved one pass away, you will feel grief in a way that you can't even imagine. If you can imagine unbridled grief, you will feel it in your soul. If you're in line in the grocery store and you're a bit frustrated because it's taking so long, oh Lord, you can get so angry. You can get so upset over the littlest thing. And then you're thinking, why did I do that? So then you run the gambit of guilt over, if you yelled or anything at someone. So you really, I always say that it's important to have self-awareness. Self-awareness is the key to getting through your TBI experience.
So what was this like when you had your brain injury, and so neither you nor your wife really had an idea what to expect, and suddenly things began to happen. What was this like for you, and how did you get to the point where you began to get a handle on what was happening, and a little more how to deal with it? How did that process work for you?
We, to be honest, I mean, we really had no idea. Like 99% of the people in the world, we really had no idea about traumatic brain injury. And I got to say that don't depend on the medical industry, because they don't know anything about brain injury either. So we went from doctor to doctor, probably went through about 20 doctors in Las Vegas. looking for someone that could give us help. I went to 3 different neurologists. Each one of them told me, you're never going to get better. Lose all hope. Here's some antidepressants.
Oh, wow.
All 3 of them said exactly the same thing. And I was like, holy cow, that's kind of devastating to hear.
What were you asking them to help you with when you approached the?
I had at least 100 symptoms. I mean,
Wow.
all kinds of things, almost constant nausea, balance issues, vision issues, pain. I mean, I was seeing things that weren't there. I wasn't seeing things that were there. Insomnia. Just imagine everything your brain controls. It doesn't do it right anymore. It does it, but it doesn't do it right or efficiently anymore. My testosterone went to 0. And that was because my pituitary gland wasn't sending out the signals for my body to make testosterone.
Oh my gosh.
My cholesterol, not my cholesterol, my triglycerides went up to 1,400. 200 is high. My triglycerides went to 1,400. So whichever part of my body, which I'm not really sure, whichever part of your body is in charge of dealing with that, wasn't, because the brain wasn't telling it to.
Wow.
I became diabetic overnight. I went from a 5 on A1C, which I would get checked regularly, to an 11. These are conditions that you acquire due to your brain injury. These have nothing to do with normal, diseases or anything.
So how did you start to get a handle on this? How did you begin to understand what was going on?
Luckily, I was at a doctor's office asking him for help. He was like, I don't know. And the nurse, thank goodness for this nurse, she says, well, wouldn't he be a good candidate for Nevada Community Enrichment Program? And we're all like, I don't know what's that. And it's the only TBI rehabilitation place in Las Vegas, and the doctors don't even know it exists.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I was so lucky to meet this nurse. So he sent a referral. We went over there for an intake interview. And after the intake interview, they said that they thought I was a great candidate for the program. And believe me, that's something you do not want to hear because that means you're really messed up.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if we explained this, but my traumatic brain injury happened in a car wreck.
Okay.
Traumatic brain injuries can happen in a multitude of ways, but car wrecks are a pretty big percentage. And it's kind of ironic. I used to drive race cars, never really got hurt. I was sitting still in a truck, not even going anywhere on a test drive, and got hit at 60 miles an hour by a Chrysler. So yeah, that'll do it. But we went to NCEP. We called NCEP, Pneumatic Community Enrichment Program. Yeah. We're very lucky, very, very lucky, because you go into there for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, until you are maximum medically improved. You see every kind of therapist you can imagine in there. You see physical therapists, occupational therapists, everything. So they do that intake interview with you, and from that, they evaluate what you need. And then for the first month, they evaluate you every second you're in there for that 6 hours a day. And you don't really realize they're always watching you, but they really are. They're even watching you eat lunch. And so after that month, you have a meeting, and your whole family comes in for the meeting. That is very important. I meet so many traumatic brain injury survivors who say, my family just doesn't understand. Well, if they had this meeting with all these professionals explaining every little bit, every symptom, everything that they've seen the patient going through, then they understand, because we sit there for a couple of hours while about 18 people around this big meeting table all gave reports on how I was doing and how bad things were. And there was a giant whiteboard at the end of the room, and the guy that runs the place, he would take notes on this whiteboard, and he filled it completely by the time they were done telling me what was wrong with me.
Oh my gosh.
It was devastating. I mean, you talk about devastating. My entire family was bawling. We were all crying. They give you they give you a couple of boxes of tissues at the beginning of the meeting. You're like, what? Do people have allergies here or something? You know?
Right, right.
And by the end of this meeting, we were all bawling. It was horrific.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, oh, great, so why did I? Then the thought crosses your mind, which for a traumatic brain injury survivor, I would say it crosses your mind 100 times a day. Why did I survive this?
Mm.
What was the point? It would have been so much easier on everybody that knows me and me, if the lights would have went out right there. Because when you get knocked out, you don't know anything, you don't feel anything, you're out, and if it kills you, pretty sure that's the way it goes. It's just an off switch. And
so during this encounter
yeah,
group experience, this is when the larger impact of what had happened to you became realized, not only by you but by everyone there in the room, it sounds like.
right. And I really feel like if more people knew about the rehabilitation places that are in every city, they would get the help that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And also the family, everybody that went in there with them for the meetings, because they have those meetings every month, once a month, and they would completely understand what you're going through, and they would be there for you. There's a lot of traumatic brain injury survivors who are out there, and they should have a support group in amongst their family and friends, but they don't, just because people don't understand. And they look at you and they think, I don't know, you look fine. And those are words that a traumatic brain injury survivor just gets so tired of hearing, because
Yes.
it's truly an invisible disability. I'm very, very lucky. The place I got hurt was in the back of my head. And so my communication skills were fine. They were just like this pretty much from day one. But my cognitive endurance was my big, big issue, because when this first happened, and for the first 6, 7 years,
Mm.
I could only talk this way for maybe 2 hours a day. And if I
Wow.
really did it and had that conversation with other people, that 2 hours would cost me the whole next day in bed. I would be
Wow.
completely immobilized
So it just
from
exhausts you.
cognitive endurance exhaustion. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
it is. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's you immediately shut down, and you have to close your eyes, and you have to lay down. And for me, I was addicted to ice packs for a good 6 years.
Mm.
Uh, as soon as I would start feeling like that, I would have to lay down and go to sleep, and my wife would put ice packs on my head. And that was the only way I could get relief. And that was the only way I could, what we call, hit my reset button and then be back to normal, sort as normal as I could get. But you're only normal for maybe 2 hours a day, and then you're down again. And when people see that normalcy, because obviously they don't see it when you're laying in bed, they're like, I don't know, man, you look fine. And it drives you crazy. And that's one of the frustrations of traumatic brain injury survivors. And also, I would say the caregivers, because they see it 24/7, and they know what you're going through. And when you're out at a family function or something, and they hear other people saying, oh, you look great, I don't know what's wrong with it, it frustrates them too. So it's pretty tough. I always said, I don't know, if my leg was cut off, would you say, hey, don't hang in there, your leg will grow back soon, right?
Mm.
No, it won't.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
is not going to get better. And yeah, I was the kind that I would push my limits
Mm-hmm.
constantly, and I would really pay for it. Uh, but I do feel like maybe that was part of my recovery. I did that for, like I say, 6 to 7 years,
Okay.
and then I tried to go back to work a few times, and that was a debacle. If you try to go back too soon, it's really bad. You'll have to quit the job within a week. And so that happened to me a few times. And then the Speedway made a post on Facebook that said, their announcer was very ill, and they felt very bad, and they wanted everybody to, you know, say something to him and make him feel good about it. But he needed a heart transplant. I mean, he was really in trouble. So I called them, and they knew me from racing there. And I said, hey, I got a little bit of experience announcing, and if you need me to stand in a couple of days, I can do it. And so sure enough, they called me for 2 nights.
Okay.
And I went in, and you would talk for about 5 hours. But the good thing was I was only talking. I wasn't having a conversation. The conversation, the two-way street, is what would really completely wipe me out. The one-way conversation wasn't nearly as bad. And I was able to survive the 5 hours and go home, and boy, I'd be out for like 2 days. I mean, I'd be in so much trouble, but I could make it through the 5 hours. So then after the second night, they hired me, and they said, we want you to do the rest of the season. And I've been doing it this is my 3rd season. I just finished my 3rd season. And now it barely bothers me at all. And I really feel like it's almost like exercising a muscle, that when you push your brain to its limit and then you rest, I think that might have been good for me, but I can't tell you really. And the doctors don't know either. They don't know anything about brain injury. I promise you that.
So does conversation still exhaust you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it takes a lot longer. It takes a lot longer. Yesterday I had my first client in my coaching business. And so I had an hour with him, and then I had a couple of other things go on. And today I have what I call a TBI hangover. I'm able to function, but I'm really having brain fog. It's a tough day, but I'm still able to function. So it's good. It's a good thing. But yeah, I don't know. You learn to really appreciate the good days. One of the weird symptoms is you can wake up and you have the flu. You have a horrible flu, and when you think, oh my goodness, I'm sick, and so you stay in bed that day, but then you wake up like later that night and you're fine, and it was completely a brain thing, just telling you you had the flu. So that's a real fun part of it. But I can tell you a little thing that traumatic brain injury survivors go through. I don't feel much of my feet anymore. I only feel my feet maybe 20%. And unfortunately, the part that I do feel, I can't stand to wear socks. Oh my gosh, I hate socks. So as soon as I get home, boy, the shoes and socks come right off, And so I have dogs, and I'll sit on the couch, and my dog would like to come over and lay on my feet. And so you're watching TV, and that was another thing that didn't bother me, was watching TV, because it was one way, I think. But watching TV, and all of a sudden I hear noise, and I look, and the dog's eating in the kitchen. But I still feel his weight and his heat on my feet.
Oh my gosh.
Before I look down, I know he's there. For a fact, I know he's laying on my feet, but he's in there eating. So things like that happen to traumatic brain injury survivors. You would see things as you're watching TV. I would see things run across the floor in my peripheral vision, and that was part of the traumatic brain injury. It wasn't really seeing a thing. It was more of just a dark object kind of flying across the floor. And of course, it wasn't there. It was just me. When I first started driving, luckily I lived in a very small town. When I would pull up to a 4-way stop, which is all we had, I would stop, and then I would start going, but then there would be a Chevy in front of me, and I'd stop right away. And it kept happening. It kept happening about a dozen times, and I just couldn't, for whatever reason, I wouldn't see the other cars at the intersection. So I had to quit driving, and I had to wait, I'd say, a year before I tried again. And then I did it with a trainer. a lady who specialized in helping people get their license back and things, learn how to drive with the injury. And what it was, I had a hard time concentrating on more than one thing at a time.
Mm.
So when you're driving, you're very often, you're thinking, okay, what do I need to do today? Blah, 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 whatever. While you're driving, you're kind of driving with your subconscious. Well, don't do that with a traumatic brain injury because it doesn't work. So I had to keep the radio off. I had to just concentrate on driving, and that worked. That worked for me. Then I could see everything fine, and it was okay. But for years, I had to really be careful. Now I'm back to normal. I can listen to the radio and things and drive just fine. And I was very happy about that because I've always been a lover of driving and a race car driver. So that was nice to get that love back. But yeah, I want to talk to people about the filter situation where you can't regulate those emotions. So unfortunately, I think people have an idea that people who have traumatic brain injuries are always angry, always angry, and it's because you're trying all day long to contain your emotions. You've got sadness going on, you've got frustration, you've got excitement. Imagine every emotion that you feel during the day, and they're all building up without being able to regulate them. And you're working hard to keep it under control. Plus, you're dropping a glass because your hand will not keep constant pressure on the glass. So you've made this big mess. So either I would have to clean it up or my wife would run over and say, don't worry about it, I'll clean it up. Well, even if she cleans it up, now I feel guilty. I made her clean it up. I made her have to deal with that. And so these daily frustrations, the dog is eating instead of on my feet, things like that, they just build up. And finally, somebody says one thing and you just scream. It's hard to explain, but it all builds up. And then now you go into a spiral of, oh God, I feel so bad that I screamed at my wife. That's horrible. Why did I do that? And so it's a real vicious cycle. It's horrible. And it's the first thing I try to work with people on because it's really important. The only way to control it is a little bit with something like Zoloft, but also with self-awareness and education. You got to learn, okay, these are my limits. And so my wife would learn to look for the danger signs. We would be out maybe shopping for groceries, but she would see my eyes start to glaze over or something, a look on my face. And she'd say, we got to go. That's it. Whatever we were doing, we would stop it and go home. I'd get in bed, ice packs, and then she would maybe go back to the grocery store. I don't know.
Wow.
But whatever it is, you've got to learn your limitations. If you're having a bad day, have a bad day, but have it in bed, relaxing. If you need an ice pack, you need an ice pack. Whatever you need, just you just got to accept that, and then you won't have those big outbursts. You just have to do it. But man, if you don't know about it, if you don't know that's the situation, and your wife or your caregiver doesn't know the situation, that can get ugly so fast. I mean, the divorce rate among survivors is super high. And I can't even tell you how hard it is. When I got hurt, I had a 40-hour-a-week job plus 2 internet businesses. I was making 6 figures a year. Now I go to zero, overnight. And plus I'm kind of helpless. Well, for a man, I'm not saying it's, worse for a man. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, as my experience, you lose yourself. You instantly lose yourself. You lose all respect for yourself. You're like, what good am I doing here now? I'm just a burden now. I used to be doing all this stuff and doing the things a man's supposed to do in my mind. And now I'm not. and what is my position here, not only in life but in my marriage?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be devastating. I gotta say that my therapist said that men have a tendency to identify themselves as whatever they do, and I
Mm-hmm.
agree 100% because you're like, hey man, I'm Scotty. I'm an announcer at the Speedway. I'm real proud of that, but if tomorrow I wasn't, couldn't say that anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just not cool. And so yeah, it can be really really tough on marriages. But if you learn, the more you learn about it, both you and your caregiver and your family and your friends, then you can get through it. Speaking of friends, you're going to lose 99% of your friends. That's it.
Mm.
Uh, Men tend to have most of their friends at work, so that's gone. The other friends that you have, uh, you might seem different to them, so and you can't hang out with them. You can't really. Uh, your brain's screwed up enough. You don't need to be drinking beer or anything like that with them. And so yeah, it really changes your whole life. All of a sudden, you are extremely alone. Loneliness is a real problem for survivors. Um, it just happens, and you got to get through it. Also, depression obviously goes along with all this stuff. Uh, I was pretty lucky with depression. It wasn't too bad until I graduated from INSEP. When I left the rehab, when you're in the rehab, you tend to work with other survivors. So
Mm-hmm.
you're in there with all these other survivors, and you're helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally helping each other get through this. And then one day they say, "Okay, you're maximum medically improved. Go home." Okay.
Wow.
Now you're home sitting on the couch doing nothing again, and all your friends are at rehab trying to get better, who you've been helping get better, and now you're the low life scumbag that's at home not helping your friends anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the deepest, darkest depression I've ever seen. That was, I just felt completely, I don't know, I felt so guilty about not being there to help anybody. And a year after this, you have to wait a while before you can come back to do anything, because you get so emotionally attached to the program and the people that they have to break that somehow. They have to wean you off of it, so
Mm-hmm.
you're not allowed to come back for a while. So when I could come back, I started volunteering, and that was really helpful. I couldn't do a lot, but at first I started helping a little bit with some research, but I really didn't feel like I was contributing. So we talked, and I started giving classes. We called them classes. You would go from for an hour. You would work with a therapist, and you would either work one on one or with a group, and then you go to the next room, and we called them classes. It was very similar to school.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave me a class, and I taught a class on disinhibition to the new clients who were there, and I just basically told them what to expect. I explained to them what they were going through, and some ways to deal with it. And that hour would cost me a couple of days in bed.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I mean,
And
it was really devastating.
and what again is disinhibition?
That's breaking your filter, just unregulated emotions.
Okay.
100% all your emotions are unregulated, and that's what disinhibition is. And
Mm.
it's a tough one. Uh, some people are more emotional than others, but if you just lose that ability completely to regulate them, then it's hard. It's very difficult.
It
So
sounds it sounds to me like you're that a person experiencing traumatic brain injury would be experiencing a lot of identity questions.
yeah,
Your identity changes from you were you saw yourself as what you did work wise, which as you
yes,
mentioned, men see themselves that way. Then you go into this recovery program, and you see yourself as the caregiver, helper in a support group. And then you leave that, and it's, who am I now?
Yeah.
And big identity questions.
The volunteer program really helps you with that, because all of a sudden you feel somewhat useful again. You're not making any money because you're volunteering, but you are helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, it was, I got to say that for feeling so empty for so long, to be able to do that again was fulfilling beyond measure.
Mm-hmm.
So it was totally worth. My wife would be like, "Man, you are so devastated after this class. You come home and I got, you're in bed for 2 days. What,
Mm-hmm.
are you sure it's worth it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna tough through this. This is something I can actually do."
Mm-hmm.
And so I did it, and it was worth it. And then I started a support group here in town, and we had some people that would meet once a month in a restaurant, and we would talk and just kind of talk about what was going right and wrong that month
Mm-hmm.
for them. And it was a good place to vent, a good place for the others to vent, and none of us would get offended. That's another thing in rehab. So much dark humor, you know.
Uh,
You're sitting next to a guy they leave your skull off now. If they have to do any kind of skull removal
oh my
to
gosh.
allow your brain to swell,
Yes.
they put your skull in a petri dish or something at the hospital, and you are without it
Oh
for
my gosh.
for months, and you wear a football helmet.
Wow.
Yeah, so you don't have a skull. So, yeah, a guy would be sitting next to you with football helmet on, and you give him a hard time, and other people can't give him a hard time. There's no way.
Uh-huh.
If you did it
Yes.
to him on the street, he'd be crying. But
Yeah.
in that situation, you could give each other a hard time, and it was such a relief. I just can't even explain to you what a relief it was when somebody would give you a hard time. You know, it's weird, but it's a band of brothers type situation.
Yeah, they're accepting you. You feel the acceptance and
Yeah,
the and a community
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It was
instead of
great.
being alone.
So we had a
Yeah.
bit of that in the support group, and I did the support group for about another year, and then I called it quits. Then I
Mm-hmm.
called it quits on everything, and I came home, and for I think 2 years, I think I stayed home, and I
Mm.
really concentrated on healing. And I built a shop at my house, and I started getting into welding. I used to build
Mm.
race cars, so I had some skills. So I started fabricating things. I started making things. And when you're out there and you're by yourself, it's quiet. Oh my God, you can't imagine how important quiet is to a traumatic brain injury survivor.
Mhm.
And it's quiet. I was all by myself. I didn't have to worry about out any outside stimulation. It was just me and the metal. And I
Mhm.
worked that way for 2 years, and that's when I really saw some healing.
Mm.
Just stopped all that stuff that was really bugging my brain, and yeah, then I started really getting better.
Had you done this earlier, would you have experienced healing sooner, or maybe you weren't ready?
And I wasn't ready. Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
By that time, my symptoms had improved to a point where I could do that. Let's say,
Okay.
uh, and so I feel like it was the right call. I felt bad about not going to the support groups anymore, but I didn't feel that huge guilt that I had felt when I left INSEP. It wasn't nearly the same.
Mhm.
Uh, Everybody knew that if they needed something, they could call me. That's fine. But I just needed to stay away from stimulation for a while. I just, yeah, you imagine all, what do you got? Five senses?
Mhm.
You're just walking down the street. How many billions of things are you encountering
Mm.
in that one block walk,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Touch,
Unimaginable.
smell, taste, hearing, sight, the wind blowing across your face. Now, you got to you got to deal with all that. Okay. You're dealing with it, and that's fine. But
Hmm.
for somebody who's broke their brain, literally broke their brain, that is a bit nightmarish,
The overwhelming.
overwhelming. We call it overstimulation.
Hmm.
I would tell Lori my storm's starting, and it was like an electric storm was happening in the top of my head.
Wow.
I could physically feel it, and it was a bad, bad feeling. When I first got hurt, all they seemed to be worried about was my neck.
Hmm.
Because I was a race car driver, I knew about necks.
Hmm.
And I told them, I said, it's soft tissue damage. It's fine. My neck is fine. Something's wrong in my head.
Hmm.
And they were like, yeah, we don't know anything about the head, but we'll check your neck. That's literally what they were saying.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm going, oh, that's great. That's fantastic. I'm telling you, something that has bad gone wrong in my head. And one neurologist told me, he said, that feeling I was getting, all my brain damage on the MRI showed in my brainstem area.
Mm.
Well, that runs your body. That's like
Hmm.
your most primal stuff there. That's running your heart and your lungs and everything.
Hmm.
So he said that the other parts of my brain were actually taking over those duties.
Oh my gosh.
And they were certain. We don't know, but like say the communication area has taken over making my heart beat. Well, if your communication area is busy making your heart beat, how good is it going to be at communicating,
Oh my gosh.
right?
Yes.
And how efficient is it going to be at making your heart beat? It's not. So
Wow.
that's why all my organs went kind of haywire, and all of a sudden I had all these weird numbers on my blood tests.
Hmm.
And so they don't tell you so many things. They don't tell you you will probably be diabetic after your brain injury. Be sure to get your blood sugar checked. They don't tell you that.
Mm.
So, what was it? Maybe 2 years after my accident, I got my blood checked, and they're like, "Wow, you're highly diabetic. Have you gotten your blood sugar checked before?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's been a couple of years. The last time I got it, I was 5 on A1C. They're like, "You're 11." And I'm going, "Wait a minute." And so I talked to the folks at NSEP, and yeah, they said, "Yeah, that's pretty common that your brain isn't operating I think it's your pancreas properly. Is it your pancreas? I don't know. Whatever works your blood sugar and
Hmm.
makes insulin, it just wasn't operating efficiently, and so had to go on some pills. And luckily, your body reacts really good to pills. My triglycerides were at 1400. They came right back down to 200 in no
Mm.
time. Now I'm at 200 still, which is a little bit high. Nothing like 1400. Come on, right?
Hmm.
So I still take pills for everything, but geez, I'd rather do that than the alternative. So I get pretty frustrated with people who say, "Oh, I don't like to take pills." I'm like, well, I'm very thankful for medical science and
Okay.
all the things they've accomplished over the years. I'm taking those pills. So yeah, the pills just they replace the signal from your brain telling your organs to do their job, and it works. So that's good because
Hmm.
your organs are still fine; they're healthy.
Hmm.
So you react very well to the medicine.
So, what is your approach, Scotty, when you're a counselor now and a coach? What is your approach when someone with a traumatic brain injury comes to you for help?
Well, I ask quite a few questions because I need to know what they know, and I need to know what they've been through so far. 99% of them have not been through rehabilitation, shocking as
Mm.
it may seem, because nobody knows it exists. So I'm out
Hmm.
here saying it exists. Go to rehabilitation.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing I do is I check with where they're at. Now, if they've been through rehab or if they've done some things and they do know some stuff, then I work with them at that point. But if they don't know anything, the first thing we do is we go through a grieving process.
Okay.
Uh, Unfortunately, once you've had a traumatic brain injury, you are no longer that person.
Mm.
The person I was ended 10/3/11.
Mm.
It does not exist anymore. So it's important for you to come to terms with that and accept it. Otherwise, you just keep trying to get back to that person. You're trying to.
Mhm.
I don't understand. They often say, "Man, I just don't understand why I can't be the person I was before." You know.
Mhm.
Well, that person doesn't exist anymore. So you need to go through a process. It's a 5-step process, ending in acceptance. And once you do that, then you can look forward and you can start becoming self-aware. Self-aware is everything with traumatic brain injury. Uh,
Mhm.
and I help them with that, but also I make sure that, they're in some kind of talk therapy. Talk therapy is incredibly important. Uh, it can be important that they're on some kind of thing like Zoloft because it does help them regulate those brain chemicals.
Mhm.
So that can be helpful too. But talk therapy is, man, I mean, it's the most important thing for a traumatic brain injury survivor. Because, like I say, if you broke the tool that you usually use to get through healing, how are you supposed to get through healing? It's
Mhm.
impossible. So you need help with that. So I didn't ever even consider therapy before I was hurt. You know, uh, everything seemed fine. Uh, uh, but after once I started going to Nevada Community Enrichment Program, the rehab center, they have a therapist there that works with you once a week,
Mhm.
and I couldn't believe how important it was. It was really something because and by the way, they don't ask you about your childhood. they don't they don't really care about that kind of stuff. It isn't what you think it is.
Mhm.
They work with you in the here and now and what you're feeling and how to deal with those feelings and how to get along better with your caregiver and your spouse and whoever, and how to work through it, how to heal. That's what they're there for, to help you with. They're not there to solve all your problems you ever had. They're just there to help you with the TBI. So it
Okay.
works really well. And I weaned off of it, I'd say a year ago. Yeah, I went back to work last summer. I got a job at Speed Vegas teaching people how to drive Ferraris and Lamborghinis at
Oh
100
my gosh.
miles an hour on the racetrack. It was awesome. And so I was doing that, and this was the first time I think I ever worked with millennials,
Mhm.
and they're a sensitive bunch.
Mm.
They are a sensitive bunch, and me without a filter, and coming from the casino business where you need to be tough as nails to get
Mhm.
through the day, I would say things to these millennials, and it would hurt their feelings.
Oh no.
These are 20-year-old, 22-year-old men, and I would just crush them with one statement. And I had to go to therapy and relearn how to deal with people at work.
Mhm.
That was the first really, day-to-day job that I got since the injury, and she helped me quite a bit. So I stopped that. I think I stopped it in December last year, and it worked fine. And unfortunately, new owners came in, and I lost that job. But it was
Mhm.
great. It proved to me that I could do it. It proved to
Mhm.
me that I could be there day in, day out. It was hard. It was really hard on my brain,
Mhm.
but I could get through it. And then, so I tested myself that way. You got to test yourself when you have a traumatic brain injury. You have to okay, can I do this? And if you can't, you can't. You just have to understand that you're not ready for that yet. So I had tried to go to work several times, couldn't do it. Got the announcing job. Well, that's only 16 days a year.
Mhm.
So that's perfect for a traumatic brain injury survivor. Lots of recovery time and
Mhm.
lots of time to prepare for your next job, your next day at work. But when you get into it day to day, that's a big test. And I was able to do it for, I think, 9 months, something like that. And so I was pretty happy, even though I lost the job. I was pretty happy that I
Mhm.
kind of passed that test. So then I went to college. I took three classes in community college here. to
Mm-hmm.
kind of retest my brain again, and did fine in that. And that's when I started thinking about the health coaching, because it was like, I want to try to help caregivers especially.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would be a way to do that? And I found the Health Coach Institute, and
Okay.
I looked into them, and they seemed great, but nowadays you just never know. So I contacted my friends at INSEP, and I had them look into the school to make sure that at the end, if when I graduate and I get my certificate and I am certified, will it be worth anything? Is it
Mm-hmm.
is it legit? And they all gave me the thumbs up, and they also said they made me feel really good. They thought that I'd be very, very good at the job,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was great. And started going to the school. Uh, I was shocked when I went to the first classes. It was all very logical, very down to earth. It wasn't like real foo-foo like I was worried about. I was worried about, I don't know. I don't know what I was worried about, but I just worried about that it wasn't going to be real nuts and bolts kind of stuff. And it really is. It really is a very smart and very well put together way of doing things. So I've been more than happy with the Health Coach Institute. They've been great. And
Awesome.
I've been doing fantastic in it.
Well, what an achievement. What a journey you've been through. And then you've been conscious through this entire journey with a vision and a focus of where you want to be, which is, and and sometimes you probably weren't aware, but at least you knew that you wanted to heal.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
and you kept on that. So now, in terms of starting your business up, you're making connections with the health community, and in such a way that they feel they can use you for, they recognize that they can use you, they recognize your value in referring people.
Yes, it's really going. Can't believe how well it's going.
Mhm.
Like I say, yesterday I had my first paid client.
Mhm.
It's a practice client, so I'm doing it for 90% off what I'll be charging when I'm certified.
Mhm.
I'll be certified in December, so that's
Okay.
good. But I've been going to the school for about 4 months now, and or maybe five, yeah. And it's been going really good. Every week you practice with another student, so
Okay.
you spend an hour as the client and an hour as the coach, and that's indispensable. I mean, that's really, really helpful, because you learn so much about coaching by doing that.
Mhm.
uh, I'm using all the things that I learned while I was at INSEP,
Okay.
both as a client and as a volunteer, and doing the classes that I would teach. I'm using all that as well, and it's coming together as a pretty good package. It really is. I My first meeting with my client yesterday. He's a traumatic brain injury survivor, and he seemed to be really, really happy with what we're doing. So things are moving forward. Uh, and I'm not pushing
Very.
too hard. Not, I don't feel like I'm pushing too hard.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm uh, really laying the foundation for the business, and I've already uh, worked worked that out with two yoga studios and a massage
Wow.
place, so that once I do start charging full price and I'm certified, I'm going to be able to throw in like 4 yoga classes a month, 4 massages a month, as well as the coaching each month. So that'll be a nice package deal for people.
So you're already working out joint venture relationships
Yeah,
and packaging your products with, bundling your products
yeah, and
with
I
yeah.
find that my business background, I did own businesses for 15 years,
Mhm.
so that background is really paying off. I've already got uh, a company in China making me some yoga clothing with our logo.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
good for you.
no,
That is amazing.
those
Um,
will be on the website in December.
this has been very enlightening to me to hear your story, because I find myself thinking of at least one person, maybe others that I know that are have exhibited some of the behaviors that you were talking about. And now I wonder if maybe they experienced a traumatic brain injury and I just didn't know. Um,
Especially if it happened in the 70s or the 80s.
mhm,
They were young, and now back then they would say, "Oh, you bumped your head," you know.
mhm,
"Ah, well, you're fine now," and you're not. And so, this gentleman I'm working with right now, his was when he was 13 years old,
mhm.
and this is the first time he's really gotten any help for it.
I can
So,
see where people don't understand though.
yeah,
People look at you and think, "Oh, you look normal.
yeah,
You don't look like there's anything wrong. What is wrong with you?
yeah.
Why are you acting this way? Why are you behaving this way?" And and it must be that you're just like a sociopath or something. And that's got to be
Yeah,
difficult to deal with.
it really is. It's so frustrating. Uh,
Hmm.
there's memes that you'll see in TBI groups that say things like things to never say to a traumatic brain injury.
Oh no.
Like number one is you look fine.
Oh my gosh.
Just
Yeah,
a whole
yeah. Yeah,
list of
you're looking
things
great
you get
today.
tired of hearing. You'll get better soon. Don't worry about it. Yeah,
Yeah, I see it.
yeah, yeah.
Oh no.
That's
So,
part of that dark humor that we have amongst ourselves.
uh-huh. And you can understand.
Yeah.
Well, let me open this up to questions of, anyone else who is here. We've got, I know Junko's here and Gus is here. Do either of you have some questions that you might want to ask Scotty?
I do, because unfortunately I've been in and out with clients at the clinic. I'm here at work, so I unfortunately missed a lot of the presentation. I apologize about that, Scotty.
No problem.
This sounds really interesting and something that impacts a certain percent of our population, but it's not very well known. So I did want to ask you a little bit about, because I missed this part about the injury. Was it just a concussion, or was it actually was your skull penetrated?
No, it was a closed injury. It was I was in a truck in the back seat. Actually, I was selling cars at that time, and I was on a test drive. We were sitting still on a highway, waiting to turn left, and we got hit from behind at 60 miles an hour. And this truck didn't have headrests in the back,
Hmm.
so my head hit the glass, and there was also like a steel support for a sliding window. And yeah, it was. I was one of the first thoughts that went through my head was, man, I wish I'd have been wearing my helmet, because I used to be a race car driver and
Hmm.
never got hurt with the helmet on. But yeah, it hit the back of my head. Got most of the damage was in the brainstem area. They said just a tiny bit more pressure and it would have snapped the brainstem and lights out.
So basically, it was like a whiplash,
Well, it
or
was,
that
yeah.
your head actually hit.
Oh yeah, it hit. There was a glass right there, so it hit hard. It was
Okay.
imagine a plate of glass going 60 miles an hour, and you're just sitting there, and the plate of glass hits you in the back of the head at 60 miles an hour.
I'd rather not imagine that, man. Thanks.
Pretty much what
Wow.
happened.
And so, what were the symptoms that you experienced?
It was like over 100 symptoms. There was balance issues. There was vision issues. Of course, emotional issues. Lots of out of control emotions. I was nauseous a lot of the time. I would. My main issue going forward was cognitive endurance issues, not having the endurance that I was used to, and so I could only talk like this for maybe an hour or two at a time a day. And if I did that, if I maxed it out, then it would cause me to have to go to bed and have to close my eyes. I can't even tell you how important it was that I closed my eyes immediately. And then I was addicted to ice packs on my head for about 5 years.
Yeah, and I overheard that you took training where you were spending time and you were teaching others, and it would take its toll on you.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I got to go to traumatic brain injury rehabilitation here in Las Vegas called Nevada Community Enrichment Program. And they do just amazing work. You can come in there, you might not be able to speak or walk or do anything, and they can work with you. And by the time they're done, you're standing up telling jokes. It is really amazing what the kind of work that they can do. But it's very intensive and it's hard work. You're in there for 6 hours a day and they're working on you the whole time. And
What is the place called?
Nevada Community Enrichment Program. It's NCEP for short. NCEP.
Okay.
They're located inside of CSN, our community college here. And they really do amazing work. They have a huge facility. When you walk in, there's about 18 different kinds of therapists there waiting for you. And you are with one hour and then move to another one for the next hour, and another one for the next hour. And they have occupational therapy, physical therapy, every kind of therapy, there is. They have in there already. They have a full working kitchen, so they can teach people how to cook if they need to. They even have living facilities. If you're to the point where you can't bathe yourself, they'll teach you how to bathe yourself at the living facility. It's like 24/7 care if you need it. It's really amazing.
Wow, that's incredible. Now you're part of that program. Now you're helping other people.
I'm not working with them or for them. I do kind of work with them a little bit in that I'm probably going to get referrals from them, but I volunteered there for quite a while after I graduated. And I used to teach a class there 1 hour a day or 1 hour a week. And that's what we call it. Because going from like one room to the next, when you are in the rehab, it feels like you're in school, going because you're in an hour at each place. But I would teach a class to new clients on disinhibition and how to deal with the runaway emotions that people feel. When one of the most common symptoms is you break your filter. You no longer can regulate your emotions of any kind. And unfortunately, it usually manifests itself as anger, because that's what people see. They don't really see you trying to keep control of all these different emotions all day long, and then all of a sudden you have an outburst, and people are like, "Oh boy, traumatic brain injury people are always angry." There have been people thrown out of the emergency room here in town because they were, cursing and stuff, and they died right there on the sidewalk because their brain was bleeding as they were speaking.
Oh.
And I see, I mean, this Nevada Community Enrichment Program, it's rich with resources, like tons of therapists there.
Dude,
a bunch of resources.
And now, you said you're in the medical profession?
So we provide clinical body work.
Okay.
So it's like massage, but it's very goal oriented, it's very focused. We work on basically helping people get pain-free, functional, and improve athletic performance using only natural methods, right?
They actually have that. We always look forward to Friday. That's when the massage therapy.
Yeah, I see there's like eight massage therapists working on individual people. I was like, wow, that's awesome.
Well, they'll have like 60 to 100 clients at a time, Unfortunately,
no, that's a rich resource. People must come from other states to tap into that.
But nobody knows it's there.
Yeah, this is the first time I've heard of it.
I went to 20 different doctors before one of the doctor's nurses told me about NSAID. The doctor didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
Is this financed by the government, or do patients need to pay to be in this program?
They're a nonprofit, but they take all kinds of different insurances, including Medicaid.
Okay.
So they rarely turn anybody away. They have people there that the work that they do is almost miraculous, and it's all cutting through red tape,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I mean, I just can't fathom what it would take to get, as many people approved for a program, any kind of medical program, as
Mm-hmm.
these people do. I mean, it's incredible work that they do, and it can't be very rewarding. I know that. One of the problems that Nevada Community Enrichment Program has is turnover.
Mm-hmm.
This is the emotional contact that you get between the therapist and the clients is immeasurable. When you start, one of the therapists is assigned as your advocate.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout your time there, if you have a problem, if you think this therapy really doesn't seem to be working for me, I'd like to try something else, you go to your advocate, and they tell the scheduler to change it or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the end of your deal, when you're maximum medically improved, you graduate. And so it's on Thursdays. It's something everyone should see. It's amazing. So one or two people will be graduating, and they'll have their advocate up there with them, and the advocate will be conducting the ceremony, kind of, and you get kind of a certificate of graduation and things, but there are always tears.
Mm. What a marvelous program. And also present throughout this whole history that you've experienced is your wife was there
Oh yeah.
as part of your support. I can only imagine if someone is alone without that support person, that must just be almost impossible.
If you just consider, like I said, all the red tape with the insurance,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a brain injury, how are you possibly supposed to deal with that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, even if you just if you have major surgery or something, I don't know how you're supposed to deal with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So having my wife there to help me with everything, but especially that kind of stuff,
Right.
I mean, that's immeasurable. That's invaluable. So for someone to be alone in this, oof, boy, I just can't even imagine.
Wow. Well, Scotty, I really appreciate it's been an honor to have you here. And I have one other question that has nothing to do with the topic at
Cool.
hand, but it has just been fascinating me through this whole thing. You've got this background that that we're looking at.
Yeah.
And is that a picture on the wall, or is that some kind of computer generated background?
That's Lake Powell, and it's one of my happy places.
Okay.
With Zoom that we're using today, they have a virtual background that you can use.
Oh my gosh.
You have to have a green screen.
Okay.
So I bought a green screen from Amazon for $10, free shipping. And then because I'm a fabricator, I fabricated the stand for it.
Okay.
And I hang it behind me, and then I'm allowed to put up any picture I want behind me.
Oh my
It
gosh.
just shows up just like the weatherman.
Good for you. I'm going to have to figure out how to do that. So you get a green screen, and then you use Zoom's virtual backgrounds, and it converts that.
Yeah, you can upload any picture you want.
Oh my gosh.
It'll be your background.
Okay.
I when I do things for the Speedway, I'll have Las Vegas Motor Speedway in the background.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I know you weren't expecting to give us help with that, but it was just fascinating watching that through the whole experience.
I use Zoom with my clients, and until now, I have been using Zoom with my other students at HCI. And while I was using it, I noticed it said virtual background, and then it says, "Do you have a green screen?" And I went, "Not yet."
Good for you. Good for you. Wow.
Good old Amazon, $10. There's a green screen. I don't know
Oh
if
my
I
gosh.
can move. Let's see if I can make it. No, it's that good. I'm moving the green screen all around right now, but it's still.
Oh, I love it.
And
I
that's
love it. Yeah, Gus and Junko, did you see that background
Yeah, I
that
was looking at it and it was really high quality, so I thought it was real. Are you saying there's a green screen?
Yeah, it's just
All
you
right,
kind of
change
see
it.
a little trouble right over here by my.
Oh, I see it. I see it. I looked at the picture, but I didn't look at like your edges.
It's because there's a shadow there from the lighting I've got over here. I don't have my
Ah,
lighting set up good
pretty
yet.
slick.
it is slick.
That's pretty good. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I thought you were just on your canoe out in the lake.
Yeah, yeah. I wish.
Okay,
No,
well,
I'm not on the computer, so I can't see all of this. So will I be able to see it on a recorded version of this broadcast?
definitely, Junko. We will,
Oh,
within the next 24, 48 hours at most, I'll have this up and it'll be on the Las Vegas Area Trails website where
oh, great.
all you need to do is click on the health education. So LasVegasAreaTrails.com, click on health education link. That'll bring up our webinar page. And then click on the path to brain trauma recovery. Each of
Okay.
these are webinars that we have conducted. There are some webinars coming up, but this one, you click on it and here you go. You will see,
Oh, great.
you'll see Scotty's page and you'll see his webinar replay link. Let me show you one. Since Gus is here, I'll just show you Gus's last one. Here we go. Because this is a completed version. And so there you see, there's Gus, and here is the webinar replay right here, and then the bio and his webinar notes and slides. So Scotty's page will be constructed in a similar way. And
Oh, fantastic.
so,
And thank you,
yes.
Scotty, for such a great presentation. I mean, congratulations on your journey to recovery. I'm just so amazed. You know, your body can heal, you know, naturally if you have the right tools. And so I'm so happy that there is a place where people can go. And, you know, in the future, I'd like to offer my services also because I have several medical devices that doctors don't have that help with brain injuries and, you know, actually your whole body. So congratulations. And I'm so glad there are places people can go. But I was just curious, how many years ago did this injury happen?
9 years ago, Thursday or Friday.
Oh, okay.
9 years ago, Friday.
Yeah, so, you know, recently there's been a lot of new technology that can help people even more. So I'd like to offer you some of my free services too. So I'll be in touch with you. So congratulations and thank you so much. I learned so much.
Well, thank you.
Hope.
Can I throw in a plug for the Speedway?
Oh, definitely. Go for it.
So if you ever know anybody with traumatic brain injury and you want to cheer them up a little bit, 9 years from my accident, I just announced the Las Vegas Motor Speedway's NASCAR weekend, the entire weekend. I was speaking to 80,000 people at once. It's the highest form of motorsports there is in America. And I was the announcer at one of the major races. And it was the proudest moment of my life. And it was incredible. And I feel like I did a great job. Everybody that saw it or was there says that they were really happy with it. So yeah, it can happen. You can get better, and you can do some amazing things. And for the Speedway to give me this opportunity, you know, first of all, they gave me such a great opportunity 3 years ago, and they let me recover and come back, and then before this, they actually gave me some chances to announce some pretty big races, and but they weren't as big as this. This is as big as it gets, and so I announced the truck race, the Xfinity race, and the Monster Energy Cup race, and it was an experience. I got to have my wife sit right next to me in the press box while I did it. My wife and I have been going to races like this for 30 years.
Oh,
And so you can imagine how it felt to have my own personal parking place in the infield for this weekend, and to walk in and be able to hang out with anybody. I mean, the highest of the high in racing. We had all access passes to everything. We sit up in above the VIP suites to watch the race, so I could see everything and announce it. And it was an experience of a lifetime, you know, and it paid pretty good, so it was good
oh.
too.
Well, this is just incredible. This journey of yours is incredible.
Yeah, it's that was something. That's something I'll never forget. I'm really. It's too bad that my dad wasn't alive to see it, because he would have been beaming. He would have been jumping off the walls, man. Because he was the one that, you know, turned me on to racing when I was like 1 year old. That was one of my first memories ever, was being at a racetrack in Tulsa, and I wasn't even able to stay awake for the whole thing. I remember laying down on the bleachers, on these old wooden, real crickety bleachers, you know, and going to sleep when I couldn't stay awake any longer. But it was the only sport ever that I felt like I needed to be out there in a car. You know, I never felt like I needed to be on the football field. I'm a big football fan, but never really had that pull on any other sport or any other thing really, other than racing. It's special because anybody can do it. Males and females compete against each other equally in motorsports. It's the only sport where they compete against each other equally. If a woman can drive better than you, she will win the top money. You know, in golf, women don't win nearly as much money as the men. And but in racing, there's nothing. You know, anybody that can race can go. And there's no, you know, there doesn't matter color, sex, anything. Anybody can compete, and it's one of the things I like best about racing. Of course, I love cars. I just love cars, and I love building cars.
I can appreciate that, because my dad was a mechanic, and my brother was also a mechanic, and he was married to a woman that was a mechanic, and they used to build cars from scratch. And I used to go to races on Maui, so I can appreciate that. So congratulations. I'm so glad you're back.
When I was a crew chief, I gotta say it was almost as satisfying to just do the things to the car to make it go fast enough to win as it was to actually drive the car and win. Satisfaction of actually the car's out there, it's doing a certain amount of time around the track. But if I turn the wrench this way, I knock off 2/10.
Oh boy!
The driver didn't do anything different, but the car's faster now. That is incredibly satisfying. I can't tell you. That is amazing. So yeah,
it's clear you really love this, Scotty, and you've given us some tremendous value today. We're going to return as a webinar. Our regular Wednesday webinar, Achieving Your Optimal Health, which it sounds like you're really on that path along with the rest of us in our own journeys, Scotty. What we're going to have next week is an open forum, and I'll be asking some key questions that, and we'll be hearing the presentation team with which you are a part, Scotty. We'll be hearing answers. I've got a few questions just to give you a preview. What are the top 5 things everyone needs to do to be healthy in terms of your area of expertise? What are the top 5 things people should avoid? What's your favorite supplement and why? What does an optimal health strategy look like in terms of your area of expertise? So we'll be asking you along with our other presenters, Scotty, next week, and just have an open forum on this. And I'm looking very much forward to this. And again, thank you, Scotty, for being here. And you have provided some invaluable insight opened my eyes to what I had been seeing around me and just not been aware until you helped open my eyes. So thank you, Scotty.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Scotty.
Okay, so with that, we're gonna conclude our webinar for this evening and look forward to seeing everyone next week. In the meantime, return to Scotty's page. And once again, LasVegasAreaTrails.com, health education and path to brain trauma recovery, and you will see the webinar replay on this page within 2 days.